So we've got a couple of new young female Muslim members of the Democratic Party. And frankly, I don't really give a rat's behind if someone is young or female or Muslim. I don't really care, what you believe or who you associate with or any of that. What I care about in this context is who do you hate, and in particular, do you hate me? Now, I can't say that Ilhan Omar has expressed overt hatred of Jews, but she's gotten, in my opinion, as close as you can get without my being able to honestly say, I know for sure you hate Jews, but she certainly is no fan. And she also is full of the most consistent ignorant leftist talking points, which might also be intentional Palestinian propaganda. I think I would like to talk to someone about this who's a little or a lot more expert on these issues than I am. And that is my friend Dave Harsanyi, who is, what is your title these days at The Federalist? Senior editor?
Yeah, I'm senior editor here. Senior
editor at The Federalist, one of the best online publications you will ever read, with some of the best writers in America, including David. Their website is thefederalist.com. And David had a piece up a day and a half ago entitled, "The Democrats' Resolution Condemning Anti-Semitism is a Joke." David, before we get into the specifics of that resolution, which I guess maybe didn't get voted on yesterday after all, can we talk big picture for a bit? I've said for a while that I thought the Democratic Party is the true home of anti-Semitism in America. Like mainstream anti-Semitism in America. Am I overstating that?
Well, no. I mean, listen. I think both right and left have anti-Semitism within their ranks, surely, but only one party right now is normalizing it, is making excuses for it. Only one has a faction, including people in the Congressional Black Caucus, people in the Women's March, the activist wing, and now Congress people who are being defended by presidential candidates who say things that are clearly anti-Semitic. They're not about Israeli policy. They're about the existence of Israel, and they're about using age-old tropes about Jewish people that their money is their God, that they have dual loyalties, all the same things that anti-Semites have been saying forever.
I've said on the show for a few years now something that you just mentioned kind of in passing. And I believe it's true, and clearly you believe it's true, and I'd like to know why you think it's true, and that is that it seems like there is a welcome place, a petri dish for the growing of anti-Semitism in the Congressional Black Caucus. Why?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's complicated in the sense that there are certain communities within, certain African-American communities where there are tensions among Jewish people and among black people. Where I grew up in New York in the late 80s and early 90s, that was clearly the case. So that, grows into something else. So I don't exactly know why, but I think part of it is just close proximity in places, in cities where that's happened. So, and there's also obviously the whole Farrakhan angle, where you have, he's an anti-Semite, and his group is anti-Semitic, and they work in urban areas as well, and they have supporters. So I think that's part of the problem.
So let's talk about what's going on right now. Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar. First, in case some people missed the story, give us a sense of some of the things that she's said or tweeted that have brought us to this point.
Well, initially it was uncovered that she had tweeted that, forgot exactly how it was worded, but Israeli supporters had hypnotized the world for their evil or something of that nature. Then she said very recently that Jews have dual loyalties, that people are asked to pledge allegiance to a foreign power, which no one has ever asked her to do, of course. And then she said something about, why does Israel get so much support? And it wasn't because they're a liberal democracy in the middle of a bunch of theocrats and terrorists, but rather that they, it's all about the Benjamins. And then she made another comment about dual loyalty very recently. So this is the sort of thing she says, which is free to say. It's a free country. I don't want to stop her from saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that it's it's not about Jews. It's about Israeli policy and Netanyahu and all that stuff is just it's risible.
Yeah, and I think she offered a half-hearted apology once and then came back and did again. And it's, I have had a couple people on Twitter saying, but she apologized. Not really. So
and who cares? I'm so sick of the thing with the apology.
Yeah.
Most apologies are because someone got caught doing something or because they're scared that it's going to hurt their career. Apologies are so what if she apologized? She didn't change her mind about anything, right? So I think criticism continues.
Yeah, and one thing I'd also mention, I think with her and Rashida Tlaib, I think these people represent their district. I actually, there are some very large Muslim areas in Minnesota and in Michigan, and it would not surprise me a bit if the people who voted for Ilhan Omar also, on balance, don't like Jews or don't trust Jews or are ignorant enough to think maybe she's right. I think that scares me as much as the words that come out of this one person's mouth.
Yeah, well, we're not allowed to talk about it, but anti-Semitism is rampant in the Islamic communities across the world. I don't know about her district or not, but and her district's actually a little more complicated. I think there was a third candidate, or there were three candidates, and the vote was split. She didn't win as easily as people think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, of course she does. If she's going to be elected, the majority of the people must agree with her, and this is her sort of defining issue. So certainly they know about it, right? I wonder what polling is in her district. I haven't seen that, but. Forget that. We have almost every Democratic presidential candidate defending her, so clearly they think it's okay.
So the Democrats brought forward some kind of draft talking about anti-Semitism, and at first the conversation and sort of the focus of your article was this thing was supposed to be voted on yesterday, and you described it as a useless and transparent attempt to distract from a serious problem of their own creation. So maybe we can talk about two things here. Number one, what was this supposed to be, and why did you think it was useless? And then, do you have a good sense? Because even reading the news stories, I'm still struggling to understand exactly what happened and why it kind of blew up and didn't get a vote yet and all that.
Well, the draft was, it had some platitudes about anti-Semitism. It didn't mention Omar. It didn't even mention really where her anti-Semitism comes from, which is a strain of the people who believe that Israel shouldn't exist, basically. And, they think Jews are colonizers and have money and have taken something that isn't theirs. They didn't mention any of that. So, and then, all of a sudden, others wanted to dilute it by adding, we should also condemn Islamophobia and homophobia and every other ism and terrible thing, which essentially makes it, useless because it's no longer about anti-Semitism. So that's the first part. And what happened was, it seems to me, is that they were going to move forward with this watered-down resolution, and a bunch of people were mad because the progressive wing of the party is stronger and stronger, and the troika of Omar, Ocasio-Cortez, and others, run the party now. I mean, Pelosi couldn't even get a vote on a simple resolution. It's not, no. She put this woman, Omar, on the Foreign Affairs Committee. She won't take her off there. She couldn't even pass a resolution. So the New York Times said there was fierce opposition to it within the party. So what this party's about now. And that's what happened. So I'm not sure moving forward what's going to happen. I suspect they'll have some kind of resolution that condemns everything in the world, and everyone can vote on it and feel good and move forward.
In a better country, or at least in a better political party, if one had read the David Harsanyi headline that the Democrats' resolution condemning anti-Semitism is a joke, and then the next day read one of the many other headlines about this resolution not getting a vote and there being a lot of objection to it, one would think that the objection was that it didn't go far enough to actually address anti-Semitism. And yet the objection was the opposite. The objection was basically that anybody would want to criticize Ilhan Omar.
Right, and another thing they're doing that is just ridiculous to me is a true whataboutism. oh, Trump did this and said this, and they've tried to find Jim Jordan put a dollar sign within Tom Steyer's name. He's anti-Semitic. It's another way of diluting again what happened. The Republican Party, as far as I know right now, maybe there's an incident I don't know about, there is not one rep that is saying anti-Semitic things. There's certainly no one who's being defended for saying those things, and there's certainly no one who's on a committee, especially a foreign affairs committee, who thinks this way about Jews and about Israel. And I'm not one who's going to say that Israel and Jews are separate, and one has nothing to do with the other. If you're anti-Israel, you don't think Israel should exist. That is functionally an anti-Semitic position in my book, and that's where all this kind of hatred manifests from, I think.
I absolutely agree with you. And for those of you who missed that Tom Steyer thing, Congressman Jim Jordan sent out a tweet in which he spelled Steyer's name, the S there, with a dollar sign instead of an S, and then some people started jumping all over him with that being anti-Semitic. And it was funny because, first of all, I didn't know that Steyer was Jewish. Second of all, it turns out that that he was actually joined an Episcopal church. I guess he was raised as an non-observant Jew, but joined an Episcopal church later, gives money to anti-Israel things all the time. And it's clear because it has been a topic of conversation for weeks now, not least here in Colorado, David, with some of the politics going on here,
sure, that
Tom Steyer is buying the Democratic Party with his billions. And that's what the dollar sign was obviously about. What was funny is that somebody said that dollar sign was an anti-Semitic thing, and then the Twitter sphere just ran with it as if it had even the slightest grain of rationality, or maybe they weren't even trying to pretend it's rational, but just to distract.
Yeah, it's absolutely a distraction. Absolutely. The idea that we can't listen, both sides all the time make fun of politicians or accuse them of being bought by special interests and big donors. He's one of the biggest donors there is. He involves himself in all kinds of things. That tweet was directed at Nadler, who was basically pushing for impeachment, which is Steyer's, hobby horse. So it was clearly not anti-Semitic. Same way whenever anyone says anything about George Soros, a terrible human being in my book, a person who's anti-Israel also, they accuse you of being anti-Semitic. I've been accused of being anti-Semitic because I go after George Soros. Listen, going after, we know what's anti-Semitic and not. Omar's contention is that Jews themselves, all supporters of Israel, Jews and non-Jews, are bought. She's not pointing to a single person, so it's not comparable at all.
Right. In a way, it reminds me of what the left does, of calling anybody who disagrees with them a racist, because it's the way they get people to shut up. But the thing is that, in my opinion, I'm not putting words in your mouth, David. In my opinion, Ilhan Omar is anti-Semitic. I don't actually think it's a close call. I got about 40 seconds here. I'll let you wrap it up.
No, I believe she's anti-Semitic. Democrats walk around listening for dog whistles all the time. Every little thing is offensive to some victim group. And I'm not saying Jews are a victim group in this country. They're certainly not. They're a very successful group in this country. But that doesn't make hatred any less real, and that doesn't make what Omar's saying any less anti-Semitic. I mean, I think she's an anti-Semite. I don't think there's any question about it. And she should be treated. She could be in Congress. She's elected. I don't want to kick her out. I don't want to shut her up. But she shouldn't be on the Foreign Affairs Committee for sure. And her speech shouldn't be normalized within the Democratic Party.
I absolutely agree. And in a way, I like her there to show so overtly what the Democratic Party has become. David Harsanyi, executive editor, senior editor at The Federalist. Everyone check out thefederalist.com. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Anytime.
We'll be right back.
This report is sponsored by Liberty Mutual Insurance, where you only pay for what you